Souls-likes. Who doesn't like Souls-likes? See, I have played a fair amount of them in my time as a certified gamer. Games that are sometimes so close to the From Software formula that it just makes you question whether or not it's worth spending your time and money on them. Now, I know when you hear the term Souls-like, you quiver in fear and disgust due to how prevalent they are nowadays. I mean, at this point, I'm expecting a Five Nights at Freddy's Souls-like to drop in like, what, 2 years? But I'm here to talk about two Souls-like games in particular. Those two being Lies of P and Thymesia. Roll the intro. Now, I hear you asking,
Apart from being Souls-likes, why are you talking about these two? They don't have anything in common.
my sweet summer buckaroony. You're right. Apart from a few features, these two aren't that similar. One has you playing as a puppet slowly turning human, and the other one has you playing as a plague doctor bird thing. One is very mid-paced in terms of combat, while the other is very fast-paced. One is pretty difficult, and the other is very difficult. But besides all of those differences, these two stood out to me in various ways that I decided to kill two birds with one stone, and talk about them both, despite how dissimilar they are. Let's start with deflecting. Parrying, or deflecting, is an integral combat mechanic in Souls-like games that keep the combat fluid and non-repetitive. See, in Lies of P, a deflection, or perfect block as it's called in-game, is achieved by blocking an enemy's attack as soon as it lands. You'll know you achieved a perfect block by the sparks that come off your weapon, the specific tinking sound, and the fact that no health has been lost. After scoring enough of these perfect blocks, an enemy will enter a dizzy-like state, which is indicated by their health bar becoming white. Landing a heavy attack during this time will result in their stance being broken, in which you can follow up with a prompted flurry attack. In Thymesia, the idea is the same. Read the enemy attack and deflect accordingly. However, instead of having an invincible stance meter that'll eventually break after a few perfect blocks, Corvus, the game's main protagonist is Corvus by the way, will focus more on deflecting, which will actually hurt the enemy and help wither down their wound meter. Get this meter completely empty and I specifically chose this mechanic to talk about because it's the one thing that these two games have in common, and something that shines the most out of the two. But why am I not comparing Thymesia to a game that it's more inspired from? For example, Sekiro. I respect these two games in many different ways. Lies of P for its presentation, fluid gameplay, and good story, Thymesia for its environments, tone, and sheer difficulty it presents right off the start. Both of these games have these unique gameplay feels that help them stand out from the rest, especially their deflection/blocking mechanics. It amazes me how simple mechanics can be evolved and utilized in different manners given whatever environment they're present in. Along with deflection, Corvus has access to skill trees that'll help improve his combat, defense, and overall survivability. Tired of trying to learn how to deflect? Just spec into a skill that just lets you stand still and block. Wanting to train more on deflecting? Well, you can spec into skills that enlarge the blocking window at the cost of doing less damage. This sort of customization in Thymesia allows the player to approach certain scenarios differently, and I think that is such a smart move. Lies of P is a much slower game compared to Thymesia, with its pacing being much closer to either Dark Souls 3 or Dark Souls 2. Lies of P follows a basic Dark Souls progression formula by dropping you in a random starter area to teach you the game's basics. You'll run around gathering early game resources and upgrades, fight basic enemies, and eventually fight the big baddie at the end. Rinse and repeat until the credits roll. Now, the way I just explained the structure of the game's progression sounds boring.
Really? You're just walking around fighting enemies until you're strong enough to beat the boss? And you're doing that the entire time?
Calm down there, buddy. It's a bit more complicated than that. Although one simple-minded individual can think that way and be only mostly wrong, the way Lies of P's progression is handled is really well done. Progressing your character feels natural, like Pino, the main protagonist is named Pino by the way, is actually learning and adapting from each fight, which allows him to naturally grow strong and smarter the more he progresses throughout the story, and in turn it makes the player feel the same way. Never in any of my playthroughs did I have to grind any resources to finally take down a boss I was struggling with. I just used my brain to think, maybe I shouldn't try perfect blocking the monstrous balding man with muscles so big it could bring out Andrew Tate's insecurities and a drug intake so astronomical that it makes the crackheads in North Tulsa look like successfully rehabilitated patients. I should just dodge. Thanks, Lies of P. Thymesia's progression is just straight up weird to me. You have 3 main areas you have to fight through with a boss at the end, and 1 area that's just the final boss. After beating each area, they then get separated into sub-areas, which either takes the entire map and sections off certain parts of it, and requires the player to complete a random objective like finding a note or destroying these things, or it creates or reuses arenas for you to fight recurrent but stronger bosses, or this thing. These sub-areas are meant for you to explore and complete to upgrade your character and health potions by giving you slightly tougher enemies to fight, and I mean, well, that's kinda it, really. I wish I had more to say about this, but that's honestly it. My feelings are mixed on this approach to progression. It's cool that we have something else to do in terms of side questing, but a lot of them just require you to find something or kill something, which results in a lot of them feeling like padding for the sake of making the game feel longer. I can't say I'm a fan. Now, fuck. Now, let's talk about bosses. Each boss is approached and adjusted to differently in Lies of P, which makes each of them stand out from one another. Even when one boss is a blatant copy of another, it switches things up just enough to make it feel brand new and unique. One boss might be an amalgamation of whatever that is in the first phase, that'll then slither into a busted up robot from an earlier boss that will then inherit the moves from said previous boss along with new ones to fuck your shit up. Or how about an armored woman with a sword longer than my will to keep going that can send lightning strikes down randomly, but then shed said armor to become the woman of my dream, to become this menacing beast that can now conjure lightning and send it flying your way. Or how about that aforementioned ex-wrestler on so much steroids that I'm pretty sure he blocked Brian the dog from going downstairs in his own home. Like I said, each boss is different. Not all of them are bangers, but even when they're terrible, they're still at least different. Thymesia's bosses are fucking nuts. In this game, I feel as if there's only 2 types of bosses. Fast bosses and my mom's 6th relationship. Something that happens so fast that it still gives me whiplash just thinking about it. Thymesia has really fun bosses. However, after you figure out its brutal learning curve, the bosses are, simply put, out of this world. I have never fought a lineup of bosses that made me scream at the top of my lungs out of rage only to then hold my hand for a moment to let me gather my thoughts, and then judo chop my sacrum coxsucks. Cocksucks? My cock sucks. Once you get the deflection down, good lord, the game feels amazing. And the bosses feel even better. Let's grab an example. Hey Varg, wanna be my example? Cool. Varg is a treat to go up against. Looking at him, you would expect him to be this slow, heavy-hitting brute that'll take advantage of you like my Uncle Dennis did on my 17th birthday when he catches you slipping up. But no, he is fast, hits somehow harder than I expected, and will not let up until he demolishes you. Out of all the bosses in Thymesia, Varg took me at least 20 tries, because he would not allow me to breathe. Now, that isn't a complaint. He has got to be my favorite boss in Thymesia, because of his rhythm, style, and looming presence over you. He's just really cool. Alright, I'm done with you.
Close your eyes, come to me, feel alright, just dance with me all through the night.
These two games are a joy to play through in different ways. Lies of P is more casual and simple, while Thymesia demands the player to pay attention and react accordingly, which is a good thing, by the way. You can be required to focus 100% on a game and still find joy in it. I know it sounded like I was dogging on Thymesia a bit while meat writing Lies of P, but believe me, each game has its own strengths and weaknesses. It's just that Thymesia's were a bit more apparent. I applaud these two games in several ways, but mainly their presentation. I love Lies of P's early 1800s London feel, with the scattered remains of what used to be a society, and I love Thymesia's plague-ridden, desolate worlds that ooze with beautiful colors and violent atmosphere. I implore you to give these games a try, because they are absolutely worth your time and money, and are also my personal favorites in the Souls-like genre. I just wanted to glaze about them a little bit, since I've been itching to do so for a while. But with all that said, go buy these games. Do it. Now.